On Alexander Bortnik, the Sieve leaders paired against chess legend Ilya Smirin.
So this tournament is turning into the War of Benonis.
The War of Benonis. So is that what happened here today?
Exactly. So Smirin started off with c4, e6, g3, c5. We actually saw this one. He played exactly the same thing, so he's being faithful to this system.
Right.
He played this against Sieve de Ribelli, where the game continued. And later on, Sieve came up with an idea and won the game.
Some serious opening prep from the Sieve in that game.
Yes. But
I feel like it's important to note that it's not quite the same as playing the Benoni against a move like 3 knight c3 or 3 knight f3 from white. With g3, white is committed to this fianchetto variation, which isn't quite as testing as some of those other lines in the Benoni.
But you might be surprised because we've seen at least 3 versions of the Benoni.
Right.
The most classical one with the c5, e takes, c takes d5, d6,
Right.
allowing anything for white to play, even this bishop f4 system, which is considered to bust the whole Benoni.
Yeah, that's certainly like one of the most critical lines.
So this knight f3, bishop f4 systems, and in fact, Stambuliak won with that exact system. But coming back to this game between Swiercz and Smirin, we have this g3 system, which is supposed to make it okay for black to play the Benoni.
Right.
Because on the highest level, if you would ask an old Soviet or Russian grandmaster, he'd raise his hand and tell you, no, 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 you shall not play the Benoni. An incorrect opening like that. And actually they say that because, yes, in the long term, you will have some extra pawns on the queen side,
Right.
but your d6 pawn will be a constant weakness.
Okay.
So g6, d6 is happening.
Goes against that Russian school to create
Yes.
weaknesses for yourself, is what you're trying to say.
Knight f3, castle, castle, rook e8. So what black is trying to achieve is to go knight e4
Makes sense.
and opening up this dart-squared bishop. Often if white goes a4, knight e4 indeed happens, takes, and sometimes even this funky move of rook b4 happens.
Yeah, a pretty uncommon type of rook lift.
Yes. Putting pressure and sometimes even sacrificing the exchange.
Ah.
Which is very interesting. You'd expect this to be bad for black, but in fact these bishops are so strong that there's ample counterplay.
Makes
The
sense.
computers would hate on it and hate on me, which I don't like that much, but practice shows that this is a game worth trying out.
Yeah, it looks
And
like an interesting line.
yes. So rook e1 was played, planning to go e4 in the future, and also keeping this pawn under protection, because in the future you can still go a3, which in the a4
kind of
system,
preventing
yes,
some pieces landing on b4,
Yes.
whether it be
Yes.
that rook or possibly a knight.
yes. So knight d2 is an idea here, and then now e4, and the point is that you want to plant the knight on c4 and the bishop on f4. And this is the dream scenario. Let's say b6, knight c4. Let me make a random move. And after this, this is the end for black. This is strategically lost. If white manages to put both the knight on c4 and the bishop on f4, this is completely hopeless, as eventually white will play e5, and there's nothing you can do.
It's never so easy, though.
It's not that easy, but if that ever happens, black can, with clear consciousness, give up on this game.
Fair enough. So yeah, black has to play with some urgency. then.
Yes. So Benoni is a tricky system. It's not bad, but you have to be on your toes all the time not to mess it up.
Okay.
a4, knight d7. Again, knight e4 was an idea here. Oh, that is, let me correct that arrow. Trying to put it there, but he went for the knight d7 way of playing, knight e5. exchanging some pieces.
Yeah, the rule I've always heard is black would love to change off at least one set of minors. He has enough squares for kind of 3 minor pieces.
Yes.
So you'll see black very often try something like 94 or 95
Yes.
to get rid of that one set.
Yes. But the main issue for black here, for Smirin, is that you might want to exchange some pieces, but you still don't want to get stuck in a passive position.
Of course.
Because then you'll suffer eternally.
Yeah, definitely don't want unfavorable exchanges.
Yes. And this one is a good exchange. You want to free your bishop or give it away if possible.
Right.
Takes, bishop f4, h3, stopping potential knight h5 ideas so you can drop back to d2. Also getting rid of bishop g4s or knight g4s. Because oftentimes this knight would like to hop to e5, and it would feel very comfortable. Let's say e4, knight g4 is a typical idea, preparing f5, and also planting this knight on e5. And just to prove a point, sometimes you would go c4 here, and the idea is if this knight lands on d3, it will be a beautiful position for black.
Absolutely.
Even if you would lose a pawn, you might still go knight d3 because it's worth a pawn to open this glorious bishop up.
Yeah.
So h3 happened, rook b8, a5. And this is the typical way of playing against the Benoni. You want to restrict black.
Yes.
Now, this is the moment when you have to be vigilant with black, because if you allow knight a4, that would stop, let's say h6, knight a4. This would stop this b5 break eternally, and sooner or later, this will get very uncomfortable.
Yeah, b5 the main way that black gets counterplayed. So if,
b5 is the main source. Yes.
If it's impossible, then it's going to be very difficult for black to stop any of white's ideas in the center, or even on the queen side.
Just to show some basic ideas in these structures, a5 is not the only way to play here. The other way is to play rook b1, and if b5...
And you want to meet it with b4, correct?
b4, correct. And you'll get, somewhat surprisingly, these Ruy Lopez kind of structures where black plays c4, but this just means that white will get a free hand of doing some active play, while black is just condemned of waiting and hoping for the best.
Right.
And if you would take, this b5 would become extremely weak, and this d6 pawn becoming more and more visible, that's going to be a big issue.
Yes, proving the point of some famous Russian grandmasters.
Yes. Then. And that's why you should listen to some famous Russian grandmasters occasionally.
They know what they're talking about.
Yes. a5, b5, and Smirin knows what he's doing. Takes, and actually I know some other Israeli grandmasters who are big experts on the Benoni, namely Lev Tsakis, who was a Soviet champion in the 80s.
Right.
In fact, he tied with none other than the great Kim.
The great Kim.
Garry
Kasparov.
Yes, Garry Kasparov.
Got him.
So he's a legend in his own right. And it's no wonder, maybe, that Smirin got inspired by his countryman.
Understandable.
So now, usually the only big issue here for white is this b2 pawn. So sooner or later, white will go rook a2 and just defend it. So e4 was played. You want to defend this pawn, but white's play mostly revolves around opening up the center with e5.
Yeah, especially with the bishops planted as they are, kind of aiming at the center.
And the good part with this fianchetto position is that this bishop gives constant protection for the d5 pawn. So if e5 ever happens, let's say h6, again, just to prove a point. Okay, not this, but if takes, bishop takes, this bishop is dominating, and if white ever manages to push the pawn to d6, this game will end in white's favor.
The powerful d pawn really is the decisive factor.
Yes. So knight h5, getting ready to stop that idea, and also opening up the bishop. Bishop e3. It's interesting. I would consider putting the bishop on d2 because that could potentially use the fact, and also
looking for some tactics,
and also maybe helping to eventually play b4.
Right.
So bishop e3 might be a little inaccurate. Bishop d7, rook a2, as it predicted, It defends, and you might even actually jump on the a pawn.
Yeah.
But is it a big deal if black loses the a pawn? Caleb?
Well, I think it's more of a big deal that you allow white's rooks into the position. So if white were to capture on a6, that means that this rook on a6 is actually going to be eyeing black's real weakness, which is, of course, that d6 pawn.
But sometimes you can gamble it, because
Sometimes, yeah.
if black gets active enough, you do get these banker kind of positions, and at that moment I want to pay my respect for Mr. Paul Banker.
Yes.
He sadly just passed away recently, and some banker plans still kind of work even in these positions. And as I showed, that knight e5 c4 plan, that's a typical banker plan.
Yeah, I think what's most important isn't really this a pawn or the b pawn. It's that whichever side kind of breaks through is going to be more active,
Yes.
and that's really what
Yes.
will decide the fate of the center even.
Yeah, that's why it's I kind of assume white is slightly better in these positions,
Right.
because white has more space and can potentially start pushing these pawns. In fact, the other thing that I kind of was surprised not to see is f5. Probably why Smirin didn't play f5. This is a typical Benoni move.
Yeah, of course.
But I guess he considers this a bit too risky.
Yeah, with white, possibly even just captures, and then I think white's better prepared to use this e file than black would be. And yeah, there's these tactical problems, there's some weak squares
Yes.
in the black hand.
So this always looks very attractive for black, but if black can't capitalize immediately, there'd be lots of weaknesses in his position.
The rule I've heard is that black shouldn't really play f5 if white can capture on f5 and still maintain control of the e4 square. And here, black doesn't have control over that square, so it looks like this should be favorable for white.
Yes. And I kind of feel that this should be the case here.
Yeah.
So queen b8 was played. Probably that's why Smirin uses and tries to use this pressure and saying that, okay, I won't get that aggressive. I'm okay with sitting and waiting for you to decide what you want to do.
Sure.
And that's actually the upside of playing the Benoni. Your moves are fairly simple. You just want to put pressure on white's center, and it's easy to play, although probably you're objectively worse.
Interesting.
So queen b8, king h2, rook b4, putting some pressure. Knight d1, protecting this pawn, and now kind of preparing this bishop d2 move.
Yeah, also, of course, the a6 pawn is now threatened, now
Yes.
that the b pawn has been defended.
Yes, bishop b5. But to be honest with you, this bishop didn't really come here to defend. It came here to go bishop c4 and get really active, or potentially exchange this knight off so the b2 pawn can be taken.
Yeah, it feels like black is making some progress in
Yes.
these past few moves.
Rook a1, bishop b3, rook a4. Now getting another pair of rooks off the board. Takes, queen b6. And with more and more exchanges, black's position is getting more and more comfortable. Because of this protected pass pawn, this actually might become a vice in the future.
Might become what?
A vice?
A vice, got it.
Yes. So knight e3, hoping to either build some ghost threats,
Yeah, white
or
is,
go to
is
c4.
starting to eye up these dark squares
Yes.
around the black king.
Knight f6.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was kind of
Yeah.
expecting even some like g4, g5 push in the future for white.
Yeah, although that's kind of a no-go at the moment, as this
Yeah,
knight
the f4 square
might become a
can't be
monster
left
there.
behind.
And also, after that, typically you can go bishop e5, and then this knight will be stationing there forever.
Ah,
And this is very
Yes.
pleasant for black.
well, if you play bishop e5, for example, in this position, I might be able to capture it.
You might, but I might even capture with the d pawn just to make sure that.
Yeah, it's a strong knight,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
I'm usually the white player in positions like these, and if I can ever force my opponent to play d takes c, I'm usually very, very happy with my d pawn.
Yeah, you're probably right, but because of this knight on f4, I'd still prefer in both cases. And also,
Yeah.
again, another hail for the banker play. c4 again would come knight d3.
Right.
And I'd rather be black.
Yeah, fair enough.
This bishop is entombed, just staring at all those white pawns. So knight e3 was played, knight f6. I think this is more, it's not that black cared about exchanging, it's like he wanted to put more pressure on e4, also getting rid of these ghost threats.
Yeah.
Queen c1. Queen c1 feels a little bit too normal to my taste.
Yeah, I'm not sure I see the tactical justification behind that. Is e4 just hanging after
Queen c1? Actually, there might be some tactics there. Takes, and the ghost threats actually become real.
Oh no, disaster.
Yes. Because let's say Queen f5, check.
Yes.
Boom.
This looks
Knight
dangerous.
f6.
This looks dangerous.
And this is the end,
yes,
my friend. The end.
Yes, no argument here.
So, ghost threats are good things, and it sometimes is useful to defend against them because they might become real.
Yeah. So what happened in the game?
h5 was
Just
played.
h5.
So actually kind of being worried about these g4 stuff. Also, now knight e4 would be possible because there are no knight g4 tricks anymore.
Right, definitely.
So g4, as you predicted, takes, knight g4. And to be honest, when black had to take on g4 with the knight, I kind of feel, okay, I think black did get a decent kind of position. You got a fighting game, and I'm not sure that black is worse anymore.
Well, yeah, we saw, black kind of make this long bishop maneuver over to b3, where the bishop now stands a lot stronger than it stood on a square like c8 or d7. And there's this latent pressure on this b pawn on the b file, whereas white's plans have seemed to have faltered slightly, right?
So no wonder Swiercz was way more under in time. He had like seconds.
Yeah.
While Smirin had like 20, 30 minutes on the clock. That's what I'm telling you. It's much easier to play the black side. For white, you have to come up with plans, but it's not as easy as it looks.
Yeah, understandable. So how did the game
Knight
continue?
g4 takes, bishop d4. But it turns out this is a bit too aggressive. In fact, taking was good enough and bringing the queen back. And after you do that, you have a potential a pawn. Not a real, so if the queen actually enters on f6, there's no real reason to fear mate for black.
Right.
So I would fancy black's chances, and I would probably take black.
In this position?
Yeah.
Interesting. Once again, I want to play this move g5 here.
Okay.
And really lock down on that square that you just mentioned,
Okay,
f6.
so queen e7.
And, yeah, I'll probably... eventually, I think I have to play this f4 move to control e5.
Okay.
I'll do it now, I guess.
Actually, your rook is a little bit unprotected, so I might just take you.
Okay, so I'll start with queen e3. I'll start with queen
e3?
e3.
Okay. Okay, if I said Albert is my favorite pawn, I shall push it. Push it real good.
Interesting. So I guess what I was trying to say is, white can still try to find some counterplay on the king's side. Eventually, I want to play something like rook h1 and king g1 and queen h3. And but this a pawn does look quite strong.
Well, what I'm saying here that it's not a huge threat. So if I ever get my queen on the long diagonal, either through queen e5 or the slower version, I don't see you checkmating me.
Right.
So probably bishop takes was a better option, as this allowed a huge move for Daro that he actually missed.
Yeah, and what was that?
Any ideas? It's a spectacular move.
Okay.
So I challenge you, viewers, to find it.
All right. The viewers have been challenged. I guess I've been challenged as well.
You are challenged as well.
My instinct just says to play queen h6 here, but then maybe I'm running into a lot of the same problems that I just was.
Your
Bishop takes
instinct
c3.
is like Daro's instinct, because he did play queen h6.
Okay, playing like Daro, not so bad for me.
Not so bad, not so bad. It's a normal move, but there was a spectacular move here.
Spectacular move.
That you just
Might
reject.
it be rook e3?
Yes, rook e3.
All right.
Because if
I've still got something left in me, Dennis.
Yes. So you're getting better and better at puzzles, Caleb.
Yes, hopefully.
So if takes,
Nowhere to go but up.
takes, which you would never take if you're any type of fianchetto player, you would never let this bishop do damage to your king.
Of course.
And it's not surprising that after queen h6, I'm gonna take all your pawns and mate you.
Fair enough.
So rook e3 would have been like a huge move. And because of potential attacks on b3, which is a rarity, usually this bishop is on d7, white wins just enough tempi to go rook h3, let's say c4, rook h3, rook e5, but that's not helping you because I'm going to chase you away and checkmate on h8.
Interesting. And I guess this also points out the difference between playing a move like rook h1 over rook e3.
Yes.
With rook h1, you can get the rook on the h file, but then you have to put this king onto the uncomfortable g1 square in order to open it up.
Yeah.
And then that doesn't give you these options like f4.
Yeah. And rook e3 is that typical move that Tal would make in a
Yes.
heartbeat. He'd say, okay, how can I win immediately?
Right.
Karpov would play queen h6 because he says, okay, I'm not sure, and I wouldn't start thinking that I should be winning here.
Yeah, fair enough.
But with an optimist like Tal, rook e3 would be just expected to happen.
Okay.
So queen h6
queen
was played.
h6.
It's not a bad move, but it's kind of a shame not to see rook e3 on the board. Queen h6 takes, queen d8, g5, queen e7, queen f8, and this is the maneuver I was saying, that the queen will eventually find its way to the long diagonal and it's going to be fine for black.
Right.
Rook a1 takes, bishop c4, and this time, because the pawn is not on a4 defended on with the bishop on b3, this pawn structure is still kind of uncomfortable for black. So there is still a hope for an advantage for white here.
Yeah, there's some fluidity for
Yeah.
white, right? There's maybe I'm going to play e5, maybe I'm going to play f5, depending on
On the
structure.
circumstance. And it's not a big deal if you go f5, because I can't really do much with the e5 square.
Yeah.
If I put my king there, the rook there, that doesn't really do anything special.
You can imagine something like white playing f5 and then f6, and all of
Yes.
a sudden there's some very serious threats
Yes.
against the black king again.
But I feel objectively this should be fine for black, because this a pawn can become strong if needed, and there is some pressure on e4. Maybe bishop d3 is a move.
Right.
Potentially, and with the king so close to this pawn, and it's probably going to be able to stop a d6, d7 push if e5 ever happens.
And so this is the current position?
Yes, this is the current position.
Alright.
Let me update there. Rook d3 was, bishop d3 was played, rook a4, and c4 was played.
Interesting.
So
I guess we should, let the players.
and Dariusz Swiercz. So there have been some developments there. We left it around here. Rook a4 was played, defending this pawn. Rook b8. So you can see the theme. Black is trying to get active in the Benoni, and Smirin knows that. c4, rook a8, and this might look strange to you at first sight, but the point is that black wants to chase this rook away and then start pushing the pawn. So this is just temporarily bad.
Yeah. Once again, I just want to say big congratulations to Jack Shimbulik.
Yeah, it's
He's
a
playing
big-
some very impressive chess this
Big
time.
result and a very nice finish in today's game. Rook
Yeah.
f6 was very stylish.
Yeah, impressive tactics. An impressive calculation too, somehow it's always easier to find your opponent's ideas rather than your own, but he seemed to really have a good handle on all of the lines. in
Actually,
that
I was
position.
more impressed with his g4 move, which I think was a very aggressive positional move.
Yeah.
You'd think it would be like tactical, but it was more like stabilizing the knight on e4.
Yeah, a lot of understanding.
So-
yeah, you were talking about this endgame. So,
Yeah, so king f2, a5, and as I'm saying, Smirin predicted that he will be able to start pushing that pawn, and this is a dream come true for a Benoni player,
Right.
that actually you get to push your a and c pawn, which doesn't usually happen. You usually use in 25 moves, and you cry why you played the opening in the first place.
I can definitely relate to just being super happy once I reach some equalish endgame. Playing the Carol Khan myself. That's often the dream.
And now white did play e5, but
Okay.
it's a different ball game as the king is in the center just
Yeah.
to block.
I felt like a lot of White's pressure was coming from the fact that it was a little unclear if the Black King was going to be able to contribute or not. But
yeah, the Black King originally in the middle game was under some slight pressure.
Yeah.
And as we mentioned, that Rook E3 move would have put Smirin in a tough spot. But in this endgame, I actually fancy Ilya Smirin's chances. And my prediction is that with 26 minutes against 10, the legend might strike.
it could happen. One question I have here is,
Yes.
can White just play Rook H1 and say,
Rook H1.
you're not going to evade on this H file, and I don't see how you're going to make progress.
Maybe I go the other side, trying maybe to go Rook C and attack the C4 pawn.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I'll just maneuver my bishop. I'll play bishop, let's say E4 rather than F3.
Let's see, let me try A3.
Ah, okay. You're coming quite quickly.
Yes, this pawn is quite quick, so if you would go Rook B1, I say A2 and
Yeah,
ask some questions.
Am I able to play Rook A1 though?
You do, you do. Can I play A2?
Bishop C2 is my idea.
Bishop C2. Okay.
I don't
So
know if-
probably you survive.
That's all I
This takes Rook B4, and I have ample play with black, so I'm not in danger because anytime you would go here, I can check you, and if I start taking stuff,
Yeah, I agree. I'm not trying to win with White here, but I think that this might be a very forcing line to go down. Because if Black doesn't go for this, then I don't see how he's going to make any progress.
actually I wanted to show this move that the engine showed, and the engine wants to play Bishop B1. This is the cutest move I've ever seen.
Of course.
Of course you would put your bishop on free on B1.
Why, how else are you supposed to attack A2?
Yes, exactly.
You just go to B1, the bishop moves diagonally.
So it's kind of hilarious that this bishop cannot move and it's dead there. So bishop B1 is a real star move.
Yes, really taking advantage.
And if takes, which would be the natural way to punish White, you can take on A2. You can go Rook A8 because I would take your bishop.
Yes.
So
Interesting stuff.
they're still thinking at this position. Swiercz is thinking whether he should go Rook H1 or not.
I'm not sure what his other option is. He has to find some way to find counterplay if he doesn't stop Black from invading, and I don't know where that would come from.
Yes. And but I do think that Smirin is calling the shots, and he has chances of actually winning the game.
Yeah, it could be. Maybe what Daro's thinking is Rook H2 isn't actually that big of a threat. What if White just plays like Rook E1, and then are you really going to come into H2?
Yes, I attempt to.
Okay, I'll simply play Rook E2 was my original idea.
Rook E2, let me attack your pawns.
Yeah, are you getting anywhere though? Rook F2, I suppose.
F2.
And now you're going to take, and
Now I
C
take
pawn is
your
safe.
C pawn.
Yes, very sad.
Yes.
Well, that's why I wanted to play Rook H1. However,
So-
Daro has other ideas with something else, and it looks like the players have agreed to a draw.
Interesting. So probably they kind of assume that Rook H1, Rook back, and they'll repeat forever.
Right.
So I would have thought that Ilya Smirin should have pushed a little bit more. Not that the position isn't objectively drawn,
Fair.
but if we look at the position, it's clearly Black who's calling the shots.